think of a way to kind of connect with more people. And this little owl, Olivia, fell into our yard and into our hearts. And Todd helped Dale build a nest in the tree in the yard adjacent to our properties. And this is actually the best ever. Let's see if this actually works.
Thursday, his neighbor saw it and knew he had to help.
He told me that there's a baby owl in his front yard and he doesn't know what to do. He fell out of a tree about 75 feet up.
But what they did next has inspired the whole community.
People kept sharing it, spreading it.
WBZ's Lisa Hughes with the story of this unlikely rescue turned science lesson.
Shock.
We were watching it all day.
Bringing neighbors and friends closer.
It sounds like the holiday, like the whole
Olivia, Thursday on WBZ News at 11.
So there was this story, and thanks to Laura Olton. Laura, are you here? Laura Olton, who is one of our friends who knows Lisa Hughes. I was telling her the story of Olivia, and I kept putting on Facebook these different videos, and she was biking with Lisa Hughes and told her about it. And that's how the story went viral, and WBZ picked it up. But it was that experience that I think all of us kind of learned how great it was to share what we thought was not that big of a deal. You know, every morning, Todd ended up putting the our camera on a tree, and we would watch these videos. And the more that I shared it out on Facebook, many of you in this very room would sit there and say, "Oh, can you send me another video? And can I see another picture of Olivia?" And that simple little act and that simple sharing really taught us all how much we all kind of needed that connection. And so it was that story that I feel like really started it all. And at that point, it kind of spread because we wanted a little burst of joy. And let's see if I can go. Oh, bear with me. And at the end of the owl story, so after Olivia had been with us for about 6 weeks, Mary and Bob, Todd's parents, they too were, so what was happening is, in the morning, everyone was kind of texting us and calling us, like, where's the latest footage? Where's the latest footage? And Mary and Bob were huge fans of the footage, and they ended up bringing this statue down to us that we put in our garden, that was Olivia. And then sadly, Olivia did not make it. No, do not tell that part. What I was going to say is, it was
3 years ago. No one.
There's joy in sorrow, Todd. That's what I'm getting at. That while it was very sad to lose Olivia, a lot of people, it was a nice story that we all shared together. And come on, it's a circle of life. And then so it was that winter that Todd was looking for a gift for his parents. And I wrote this: "Bye-bye, Mr. American Pie." Many of us who've been married for a long time become bitter over gift giving at the holidays. I'm not sure why. Sorry, but I need glasses to read this. I'm not sure why, but when I got married, I took over the role of Santa, purchasing all the gifts that our family gave to others. I'm sure that it was exciting at first, but over a period of years, it became a burden. Sorry, Greenfields. Last year, in a frustrated moment, I suggested that Todd help me with a gift for his own parents. My in-laws are the most gracious people I know, and they refuse most gifts, thinking they are unnecessary or extravagant. They just want the gift of our presents, which makes the selection of an actual present challenging. Todd reviewed what we had given them in the past and came up with the idea to sign them up for a meal delivery service. His mom loves to cook and his dad loves to eat, so this sounded like a great plan. To be honest, I was just happy not to have to shop for another gift. We sent them the gift of Blue Apron, and Todd spent hours FaceTiming with his father to teach him the ins and outs of how to select meals. Todd also added boxes of wine to the order, which was selected to pair with the meals and scheduled for weekly deliveries. Twice a week, I would walk into Todd's home office where his dad would be on his screen gushing over this latest dish. His mom sent photos of their table with a white tablecloth, lit candles, a bottle of wine, proudly presenting their latest culinary accomplishment on 2 plates. My father-in-law would greet the delivery person in the driveway and help him unpack the crate like a young boy on Christmas morning. It looks so good, I had to start the salmon before Mary got home, he'd text. wow, I've never eaten bok choy, and it pairs so nicely with the rosé they sent. In 30 years of us being together, I'd only witnessed my father-in-law grilling and drinking bourbon, so this came as a pleasant surprise. For many months, this gift gave Todd a daily connection with his parents, and he saw a side of his dad that he had never seen before. On Valentine's Day, they texted over the joy they shared, cooking scallops and enjoying the new wine together for a dinner they created. Their stomachs and our hearts were full. We could not have imagined that 2 weeks after Valentine's Day, my father-in-law's heart would fail and take him from us. We spent many days sharing stories and gathering photos of our time with him, and many of those involved his newfound cooking skills. At his funeral, Todd stood before the church filled with our family and friends who came to show their love. He delivered the most heartfelt eulogy, filled with laughter and tears for the memories that were created by his father. Todd's mom sat proudly in the front pew of the church, holding my hand and gushing with pride as Todd exited the altar. "Thanks for giving Dad that gift," she whispered when a teary Todd returned to our pew. I think Todd nailed the gift giving that year. And that ended up being just joy and sorrow. There's a beautiful Rumi poem that I have in this book that I love. Sorrow prepares you for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of your house so that new joy can find space to enter. It shakes the yellow leaves from the bough of your heart so that fresh green leaves can grow in their place. It pulls up the rotten roots so that new roots hidden beneath have room to grow. I love that poem. So Todd, see how I brought it all home? Now, for those of you who didn't know, I worked here for 7 years, which also I learned about the power of connecting with everybody. And many of you in this room would always gift me books. I got books in my mailbox, I got books for presents, I got books from book club. What you don't realize is every time one of you gave me a book, it was so inspiring. I mean, whether they were, you'll see them all here, whether they were a book about how to write or something that was just beautifully written, all of these books were little sparks of inspiration. So I wanted to thank you guys because they mean a lot. So if you're ever wondering about what to give people, here you go, here's a list of books. Now, I use social media to kind of connect people together. And there's a really fun game that I like to play called Got Any Kings? This is getting easier as I keep doing this here. Okay. Go Fish has been my favorite card game since I was little. I love the simplicity of the activity. No complicated rules to follow. You ask, you offer, you trade. The person with the most matches wins, and you start another round. Isn't it ironic how this game actually works in real life? You ask for ideas, you share yours, you trade experiences, and in this case, everyone wins. Well, when I'm exploring a place to visit or experience, I ask around to see who can offer suggestions. I love going fishing for new places to see, shows to watch, books to devour. I make my recaps for new ideas. I trade my recaps for new ideas. Years ago, my friend Katie, who's here, shared that she kept details of her vacation in a travel journal. When we were planning a trip to Arizona, her notes provided me with great recommendations for places to see, stay, and eat. I duplicated her trip to Key West and passed along ideas for Costa Rica to my brother. Knowing that a friend explored the spot prior was easy, and the arrival eased my anxiety. To kick off this summer, we took our family down to South Carolina. Charleston was on my adventure list, and our youngest wanted to begin his college search in the South. Well, that's ironic. Traveling to an area where we didn't have friends or family would ensure that we would have quality time together. If you have teenagers, you know that forced family fun is not always met with enthusiasm. You may have seen Jennifer Gardner's movie about parents who spend 24 hours saying yes to everything their children suggested. After a year of saying no to going out without masks, no to large gatherings, and just a lot of no's all around, we needed a yes trip. Our version was to embrace spontaneity by following our son's recommendations, trying new foods, staying out later, and not controlling our vacation schedule. Our favorite activity was learning how to drive jet skis around the surrounding islands. Not all games are played with a group. When I'm struggling to shift into a positive mood, I play Mind Solitaire. I use photos or quotes to help me pause, reframe, and taste the moment. In her podcast, Yale professor Laurie Santos shares you can increase joy by ruminating over the good parts of the experience before, during, or after. This is called savoring, which is the act of mindfully attending to the experience of pleasure. You can enjoy the moment by soaking up someone else's joy. My dad did an excellent job of this by saying, does it get any better than this? When we were together at a barbecue, a beach walk, or just enjoying coffee, suddenly breakfast would taste better, the view got a little brighter, and the conversation livelier. By displaying vacation photos throughout our home and giving gifts I've purchased on the trip, I continue to savor. Hats or t-shirts from a favorite local spot, a cookbook, or a candle whose scent reminds us of the adventure intensifies the memories. Once I share my own journey, I can collect ideas for future trips and discover new places to explore. I create a dream list of future adventures, which I keep in daily sight. It is a game that gives me such joy. And thank you. Many of you are constantly sharing on social media, and I think that's so much fun to do. So thank you. So let me see here. Now, one of the questions that everyone keeps asking is when this started. And I sound like Jennifer Coolidge in White Lotus when I'm like, well, but it really, truly did begin when I was kicked out of ballet because I was not graceful enough. And I wrote a story about it, which it was in 4th grade, and our project was to take a book and write it, and it would be published in the Belmont Public Library. And I wrote a book, which my mother, queen of collecting, she saved the card catalog, not the book. And it was called Susie and the Ballet Teacher. And it was about a girl who hated her ballet teacher. But so that project really, obviously, was memorable for me. And then 2 years later, we had to do a project at school. And this was the year that I met Todd Greenfield. And we had to write what our goals would be. And so I was 13, and I wrote in this book that I want to be, I'd like to be successful, and I would like to help people share money like Sally Struthers, and be a best-selling author, and visit all of my friends on my yacht. However, I spelled yacht Y-O-T, so I would... So pay attention to what your children are following from their teachers, and actually the teachers in the room can see how memorable you really are. So that's kind of how I started, and how I got to this point. But what about questions from you guys? Now that I've just done all the talking. Does anyone have any questions about anything? I guess how I got here. Oh, yeah. Yes, Jim?
How do you find humor in everything?
Oh,
That's what
God.
I want to know.
I don't. Yeah. No, I do not find humor in everything. And I definitely, my first thoughts of the day are, and Todd will agree, my first thoughts are very grumpy. And it's like I have a whole process to get myself out of bed and shift my mindset. The alarm goes off and it has to be fun music. I can't, I have to listen to something fun. I literally have to put clothes next to my bed if they're across the room or I don't want to get into them, I will lay there. And then I go downstairs and the first thing I do is try and read something, a page of something. And I feel like that those steps help shift because my first thought of the day is okay, I'm going to get up and this is going to be fantastic. And now that I kind of know, I can kind of see the signs, I definitely turn to music all the time. I have a playlist that, at the end, Todd will play it, but I have all these songs, and I was just telling Sarah this, that especially if I'm driving to work and I'm sitting in traffic, I sing so awfully at the top of my lungs, and that puts me in a better mood and calms any kind of anxiety because I sound awful, first of all, but and I just sing, but it's music. And reading something. I feel so I used to make fun of my mother because growing up she had books all over the house. How do you possibly read a book in your pocketbook and a book in your car and a book on the nightstand? And now that's exactly what I have. All these piles are all around our house and I just will grab something. And that's actually why I wanted to design this book so fast, because this is literally how I like to read. I love to sit on the beach and read a book for 3 hours, but that doesn't happen as often. I want to read one page of something just to shift. Yeah, Sarah and I call it flipping our pancake. Yeah, when you're really grumpy. Yeah. But the other question that people keep asking me is, how? And that was the hardest thing for me, is that I kept thinking I wanted to write a book, but I had no idea how I would ever do it. And when I started working here, I left Boston College, and I was like, well, if I'm working in a library around books, somehow that will seep into my body. But all of us, your life gets really busy, and I couldn't figure out how. And then our book club had Adrienne Broder on Zoom, and it was the first April, right? We just shut down. It was April. We were reading the book Wild Game, and I sent Adrienne a message on Instagram and said, this is really crazy, and it's this whole new lockdown thing. Any chance you would come in and Zoom with our book club? And she was psyched. And if anyone has read the book Wild Game, there's a whole thing about this necklace that she writes about. It was so awesome, because in our book club we were like, hey, what about that necklace? And she was like, oh, wait. Oh, this necklace? We're all But the next day I sent her an email and I thanked her. And I said, I would always love to write a book, but like, how? How do you possibly do that? And she said, I get up earlier. I was like, huh? And like when you see a friend and they've lost a lot of weight, or someone's bought a house, like you want so I was like, wait, what? She's like, 10 minutes earlier. I'm like, she's like, every day get up 10 minutes earlier. I was like, I wanted the magic pill. And honestly though, I took her advice and I started getting up 10 minutes earlier. And then I started getting up, and this was exactly what she said to me. You will learn that you like it. And so 10 minutes turned into 15, turned into 20, and turned into 30. And that was a game changer for me. And that is literally the only time that I write. I write from 5:30 to 6 a.m. And that is the only time in the day that I have to write. I have to be in a mindset. So I did that for 2 years, every single morning. And once I got into that routine, it became addicting. I mean, Todd will tell you. He'll be like, can you sleep in this day? I'm like, no, it just became And then you have great satisfaction, because you go about your day, you go to work, you're dealing with kids, and you're like, I wrote for like 20 minutes today. It feels great. And then that took 2 years. And then at the end of 2 years, I had a manuscript last summer. And I was like, okay, I finally have a manuscript. This is awesome. I'm sorry, before I started writing every day, a friend had said, I've seen a lot of authors, they have a column in a newspaper. Why don't you try doing that? And Sex and the City, that's kind of how she did it. So I was like, okay. So I sent an article to the Sudbury Crier, and they were like, you sure you can do a Joyburst article? So once I had the article, it also would give me a deadline, right? Like every month I had to give them something. So then when I had all those different articles together, stitched them all together, put it into a manuscript. Last July, I was like, I have a manuscript. This is amazing. And I started asking people, like, so now what do I do? How do I get it from out of my computer? And so many people were like, oh, it takes years. You have to sell yourself 2 to 3 years. And I had just started my job at 10 Acre, and Mason was going into his senior year. And so in August, I started putting it together. And so if anyone has done this before, every time you go to pitch to an agent, it's different. It sounds like you could just kind of put it all together and copy and paste it, but every agent, Christy might say, well, I want to see how your book is the same of these 6 books and why yours is better. And everybody has a different spin. So I did that a couple times. I was like, oh my God, I don't have time to do this. So then in October, ironically, on Grandma Phyllis's birthday, at my job at 10 Acre, our head of school came to me and said, can you help us? The school needs a speaker on joy. And I was like, oh, this is really weird. How do I pitch myself? I was like, I could, so I do fundraising for those of you who don't know. I was like, I could probably do it. He was like, you could speak on joy? I'm like, yeah. And I started rattling all these joy quotes. He's like, where do you have all these? I was like, I have some stuff on joy. So he's like, if you want to talk on joy, that would be great. It happened to be Grandma Phyllis's birthday, which I thought was some sort of crazy sign. And Sophie, my niece, came with me, and she was amazing. And after I spoke to the kids about joy, and it was great. And I shared the owl story. And at the end of it, I sat there and thought, what is my goal here? Is my goal? It's going to take me 2 to 3 years to publish this book. Joy is needed now. Because I was like, I don't want to wait that long. And after seeing all those kids and how fast they kept coming by and asking me about Joyburst, and they responded so fast that I was like, this is needed now. So again, I was like, okay, so what are my choices? How do I do this? So then I sent out an email to everyone I knew, like, does anyone know, an agent or a publisher, how I could like make this faster? Because I don't have the time to send it out to people. I just didn't want to spend, if I have a half hour a day to write, I didn't want to spend a half hour emailing people in cyberspace. And Chrissy actually was great and said, I have a friend who published a cookbook. I don't know if that would help. I was like, and I talked to 4 different people. Chrissy and other friends gave me, Monique, and people gave me people, and I would call them and say, okay, so how? Like, I just couldn't figure out the how. Like, how did you do it? And Chrissy connected me to this woman, Heather, who publishes through Amazon. And she was like, you can hire me, and I'll do all the, because honestly, I couldn't fathom the layout, design, all that piece. And this woman, Heather, was an angel. And she was like, I can work with you, and that was great. So I feel like that once I got curious and started asking people for help, because before that I couldn't figure it out. And then honestly, don't let this gorgeous cover fool you. Putting this on social media was the scariest part ever. 2 weeks ago, when I knew it was done, I did 2 things to force myself. I knew it was going to be done very soon, and I kept checking it over for weeks. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. And then I actually contacted Kristen and Sarah here at the library and said, book me for a book event. Because if I was booked for an event, I had to finish it, and it had to be done, and I needed that. Like, I knew I couldn't invite you guys to a party and then just not go. So I knew that about myself, and so I did that, which was actually great, because then I could get it out. But and obviously I just started sharing it a week ago. It's amazing. I can't believe I was so scared to do that piece, because once I did that, but Kate and I always have a phrase where it's like, just send it. Like, I literally had to, and that's to me the scariest part, because now everyone's reading these very personal stories. All right, I have one more to read to you that is really great, which is, so a lot of people ask me why we call our dad Pake Bits. And this is a story that we wrote. Dear Dad, this time reminds me so much of 9/11 and the first time I heard you cry when you called as we watched the towers on TV. You were so distraught for the people fleeing from those buildings, and you worried about your own staff in Boston. I track how long you have been gone by all that has happened. You've gained 5 grandchildren, a son-in-law, and a daughter-in-law. You loved your Palm Pilot and would be blown away with the iPhone, the Apple Watch, or AirPods. You would get excited today over the way people are learning to connect virtually. The week before the pandemic exploded, I was driving to work thinking how excited you would have been to have me working in your town. You would have spent time being sure to connect me with anyone you came in contact with, and your networking skills were legendary. And Sweet Green would have made you so happy. How I wish I could meet you for a quick lunch. That day, my coworker, Sarah, asked me to ride with her to pick up lunch for our office. When I got in her car, I felt your presence. On her passenger seat was the book, Close Range, Wyoming Stories by Annie Pruitt. Sarah explained that for some strange reason, she had not returned the book her husband had taken out of the library. I told her the story of your bucket list trip to Jackson Hole when you realized that your cancer had spread and the future looked bleak. On that flight, you asked us to start calling you Pake Bits, a cowboy character from Annie's book. You believed that you needed to adopt a courageous cowboy character so you could kick cancer's ass. You were going to become Pake Bits, and we laughed so hard we teased you. As things happen in the Colbert family, it became a joke on the trip. We even made up nicknames for Mom to accompany this silly idea. We started calling her Pookie, like that was the craziest thing we'd ever heard. When we returned from Jackson Hole, I became pregnant with Tyler, and we decided that Pake was a more suitable name than Grandpa, and Pookie would be his trusty sidekick. We have all told this story often since you passed, and we never called you Dad again. I read the book and realized the character was not a brave role model, but you must have liked his name and wanted something. When authors write their stories, I expect they plan to touch their readers, but do they ever really know the effect their book may have? 20 years after first hearing this book, we're still talking about it and rereading it. The older I get, the more I enjoy reading and finding books to be a wonderful escape. To all of the writers out there, please do not stop sharing your gifts, especially with all that's going on in the world today. You never know who might need to hear your story. Does anyone?
tulips.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you guys very much. If no one has any questions, thank you so much for coming and for buying the book and reading the book and sharing the book. I'm hoping it's a book that you give with a bottle of wine or to come have coffee or just to pass along because it's short and sweet and good for anyone who has ADD and wants to just read. And throughout the book are Grandma Phyllis's pie recipes because Grandma Phyllis was super snarky, but when she arrived, she'd always come bearing a pie basket of her pies, and so we have those in here. So yeah, so thank you guys very much for coming.